As with the topics that T channels often report on, this video will allude to a couple of pretty serious topics that are not for the faint of heart. I don't go into much detail from any of these things, but that doesn't take away from the seriousness of a bunch of this stuff. Also, don't harass anybody mentioned in this video. Some of the actions committed by the people may seem hysterical, but that doesn't warrant a response from them or any harassment towards them. It's purely for discussion and not for destruction. And with that out of the way, enjoy the ride.
Hey everyone, so I wanted to address the video that I posted on Tuesday, and the first thing I want to say is that I stand behind my video that I posted.
But also, Perez Hilton, get him off TikTok. Please, can we get this grown man banned on TikTok?
Though I must admit my immediate bias was and is to distrust Nick.
I was pretty clear in my video. I don't really think I needed to spell it out.
So I'm the one that's having to deal with the consequences and the brunt of the situation.
One of my favourite video topics or genres on YouTube recently has been the content criticising the people that criticise others. There's an interest I find in this sort of style due to the compelling nature of that, and definitely not because I like to see the failings of others. In a community like the one I surround myself with, some criticism made towards something or someone might not be justified or could potentially be completely hypocritical. Especially with the desperation to gain views and attention on this platform, this will be pretty common in any community. I reckon most of this enjoyment also comes from an interest in knowing what to do and what not to do in specific circumstances as somebody that focuses on critiquing or addressing drama myself. Now, to make this clarification on what the video is, no harassment is warranted from this video. This is simply a video showcasing what not to do as opposed to attacking the creators head on. Many T channels seem to inflict harassment or doxing on other people, and I would appreciate it if it was evidently not an outcome of my content. Because believe it or not, I may not agree with them, however I care about the well-being of these people. Most of these individuals I can see being pretty lovely behind the scenes. You see, in every genre of YouTube videos there will be some rotten eggs, shall we say. And that's perfectly fine, it's only natural. If you are said rotten egg, there's always a chance for you to learn from your mistakes. Personally, I'm not somebody to hold these kinds of things against you. However, in a specific community or genre where giving criticism and talking about other people is such a common trope, you unintentionally hold yourself to a much higher standard than the people you're talking about. You need to be able to conform to the same standards you hold others up to. If you're going to take the moral high ground, which a lot of people do by the way, you're going to need to have a good enough scaffolding to stay on that high ground. Yes, I only said that to use as a visual gag for this video. That's just the cutthroat reality of making tea or commentary videos. One mistake and you're done for. One of the biggest arguments or criticisms people use against other creators is hypocrisy. Because being a hypocrite is almost completely immoral, and in a sense there is no leeway. It just depends on how big of a deal a contradiction is, innit? There is not a case where hypocrisy is right, unless it's a statement that disagrees with one of your points in an essay 5 years ago, for example. And if Comment Cop tells you anything, it's how hilarious a little gotcha moment can really be because of it. As a commentary channel myself, I'm also held up to these standards, hence why I enjoy content criticizing those who choose targets themselves. In a way, it's a self-improvement tactic, you could say. In fact, that's the purpose of this video. I will mention a number of specific creators and actions, but I'm not necessarily calling them out per se. This is simply to establish a precedent against the issues these types of channels have. Now, after that extremely long unnecessary ramble, let's talk about T channels. Alright, how's it going lads? Welcome to the home of the cute animated guy. Take a seat, get comfortable, grab yourself a drink and shut up. I think I'm going to open up with a rather bold opinionated statement. I don't enjoy watching T channels. A lot of the time I can't find myself getting emotionally invested in any of the drama, and I often can't stand the editing style or often not editing style of many of these creators. I also think their titles and the language they use in their videos is just annoying, and a lot of the time it comes across as a little bit obnoxious when they are talking about something that's actually extremely petty in such a sassy and self-righteous way. This is coming from a personal preference of content. Nobody's inclined to enjoy watching my content either. I even sometimes doubt I would myself. This obviously does not boil down to the reason I'm making this video, because as an individual as interested in drama as I am, there's certainly an overlap between generalized drama content and T. I agree there. You could say that I myself watch some T channels. As a concept, I think there's no issues whatsoever. I would not be able to argue anything along the lines of, they talk about people's personal issues, because that is inherently what I do myself anyway. You can use that as an argument, but I can't, because then I'll be a hypocrite. To clarify what a T channel is in comparison to a commentary channel, they're the same thing. It's just that T is openly more opinionated drama videos about the things like TikTokers or the more makeup kind of side of YouTube. There's a lot of overlap between the two. I guess it's the people you associate with too. For example, I would personally place I'm Alex as a T channel now because he's mostly talking about TikTok. Probably going to be the most controversial take in this whole video. Either way, this video is about them, so enjoy it, or whatever. The reason I'm establishing this is that unfortunately during my admitted lack of experience in this community, I found numerous issues that seem to follow a similar pattern throughout several creators. These are not unique to the creator, let me make that clear. These are common issues, but in many cases specific examples are important to get a grip on the issues. Many of the people mentioned in this video are actually very entertaining, it's just unfortunate how they've fallen into this trap and I want to dig them out. A lot of these individuals doing specific actions have had expose content made on them. However, these videos are generally too difficult for me to watch, or are made just to mock the individual and not really raise a point about them, or in fact don't raise any points at all and are just pretty plain critiques. My intention is to create an at least somewhat civil discussion revolving around the production of this kind of content and its many issues. Alright, enough beating around the bush, let's actually have a look at the troublesome side of T channels. Many of these particular people have had a very strange motive when making their videos. Most of the time it seems to be more, let's go after this person, as opposed to actually wanting to better the community through something. This is unfortunately provoked by the fact that views are a pretty good motivator for the direction of content. The audience wants to see people fall. I'm not going to put that lightly because that's the reality. The audience wants to see you rip apart a creator and eat them for dinner. So I'd rather not because I'm not a cannibal. If you want to, feel free to make content ripping into somebody, but there will be consequences for that, just as there are consequences for these creators, especially if what you're going to do for them is invalid or worse, hypocritical. These creators most of the time couldn't care less about what Jojo Siwa did or something, they just want to kick views out of going after another creator and exposing them, innit? Regarding this issue, one of my favourite videos is the one by Cat Black, titled, Be Honest, You Don't Care If They're Racist. It's pretty good, it's an in-depth look into the issues with cancelling celebrities purely because they aren't nice people or something.
Not to actually talk about the pain that is caused when people express anti-blackness, but to cancel each other. It's honestly becoming a bit annoying.
Where I think there's a difference between the people in the so-called commentary sphere, or brotherhood, and the T-ish sphere is when it comes to a bias of criticism. The mentality I've noticed that contrasts a lot between generalized drama is that in terms of T, you're either for somebody or against them. This is overgeneralizing, but it's a pattern that I've definitely noticed. In cases such as Onision, Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson, there's an odd sense of this. What do I mean by that? Well, take the Onision drama and compare it to the likes of the H3H3 versus Keemstar drama, just as a weak comparison. While there is ultimately an overlap between both sides of this drama, the Onision case is more T, at least in this context, and the latter case is more commentary, considering it involved two commentary creators. In terms of the Onision drama, many individuals found it difficult to criticize or not support Chris Hansen because of their distaste for Onision. I personally have no issue in saying that I completely disagree with many of the actions made by Chris, while also completely agreeing with the sentiment that Onision's worrying behavior and beliefs need to be looked at more carefully. If you have about 3 hours and 53 minutes, may I recommend the Right Opinions videos on Onision? They're a reasonably good summary of why I don't exactly support this Greg feather. Now in regards to the people criticizing Chris Hansen or Shiloh, for example, creators like Nicholas DeOrio and John Swan, people you might recognize the names of, were initially bombarded by other creators and the general public that disliked Onision when they openly gave their thoughts on Chris Hansen. Obviously, due to the sensitivity of the Onision case, I don't blame them if they were just unaware of what they were really saying. My personal issue here doesn't come from why they don't like Onision, it comes from the fact that because they don't like him, they don't feel capable of making a stand against one of his detractors. You're either with them or against them. It needs to be made clear that two wrongs indeed do not make a right. We will come back to this very shortly. Let's pull back the fishing rod a bit and have a look at Keemstar vs H3H3. Creators like Turkey Tom and Nick, go away, why are you involved in every single drama? Criticise H3H3 for the way that he handled the situation. However, in spite of this, it's still acknowledged by the vast majority that Keem has made some awful mistakes in the past. Anybody that has criticised Ethan Klein would testify to that. A point made against one person doesn't mean that the point made against another person they were in an argument with disappears. This is one of my problems with T as a more generalised genre. Alright, if we look at these channels more specifically, I found that many of these people seem to have a big problem of, if this guy is bad, they do no good, and if this guy is good, they do no bad. This can be seen evidently in stories like her pal Shane Dawson, for example. Way back in the day, he was seen as this unproblematic king. Oh yeah, sure, he's done some blackface in the past, he's made some extremely grotesque remarks towards minors, but those are jokes, so it's okay. He's an extremely empathetic person, dudes. He definitely doesn't want you to know that. People wouldn't report on that kind of thing because it wasn't seen as problematic at the time. In fact, if you were to say anything remotely negative about Shane Dawson, you would have a horde of teenage girls aggressively running after you and shouting mean things. Yet as soon as the people suddenly started to see him as a more problematic individual, suddenly these actions are no longer justified? Do you see my point here? It's a little bit numbed down because most of the internet seems to work this way, but I hope you get it. As I said before, a lot of these channels make their primary focus money and growth on YouTube. I give my respect there, it's a dream job and that doesn't necessarily matter. Shoving out an unedited or boring video every day is not the problem, because I enjoy many creators that do that. My personal grievance comes from when you would exhaust a story to such a point that you would just create lies to form a narrative, would do sloppy research to execute a narrative, or would downright make an insensitive mistake or an accusation simply because of a narrative. Let's go back a bit and bring up the Onision story to light yet again. T-channels such as Drama and Opinions, for example, reported on the not-so-credible emails that were apparently meant to be, purely because Onision's a hated figure. I apologise in advance to Drama and Opinions for picking on her because she was probably the most vocal about the whole ordeal. A, quote, spokesperson released or opened an email method for victims of Onision to come forward with information. This is a bad idea considering the rather cult-like following a community such as the Anti-Os have, but otherwise could have had many positive outcomes. Drama and Opinions was one of the individuals that made a video, in which she stated that the emails are from victims of Onision.
He said that they are putting out an email so that people who were victims can actually reach out to them so that they can conduct interviews. And
okay, so basically what happened here is there's a tip line out for anyone to go give information about Onision.
And then proceeded to merrily read somebody linking a Leafy video as evidence of him committing a crime. What? If you know anything about Leafy, you would know that what he used to say in his videos were definitely not criminal evidence. A lot of these emails were in fact completely ridiculous, and it's an utter shame in my opinion. I find it very odd that she wouldn't point out that this person linking a Leafy video is clearly not a credible victim and would instead read it out to her audience. According to a comment she left on the video, while it was still up, we'll get to that in a bit, there were apparently some real emails from alleged victims, but the examples she gave made it look like a complete tomfoolery. Not in a good way, might I add. And the comment was only made a while after she made the video and received backlash for it, I believe. So that feels a bit strange to me, because then she would have been openly talking about Onision victims writing to the police, despite being random people on the internet, one of them being from Australia. Okay. I don't blame victims for using this as an avenue to share their story to the police, obviously, especially if it's their only method. However, and this is a pretty big however, mate, considering some of the awful stuff some of the alleged victims have said about Onision, I personally think that it's actually insulting that she would have made a video talking about some random Twitter users, titling them as victims, coming out to speak about Greg and place them alongside people like Sarah. These emails put shame on the Onision case, and it's actually a pity that she pushed them out as if they were this big destruction of his career. This would obviously not be a serious issue in any other scenario, really. However, due to the subject matter, this is a concerning mentality in terms of how she creates content. It makes the whole story look like a joke, and it stains it heavily. Now, this is not Magdal's most impressive moment, nor is it her least impressive moment, but she probably had no ill intention with this video other than to maybe bring some dirt on Greg, James, and Onision. But situations like this gotta be handled with care if you're trying to do something with it here. Now, here's a little bit of a twist in the story. Just as I had finished off writing the first draft of the script, I went to look for the video to clarify something. And now it's private. I watched the video the previous day, so approximately the exact night I finished the first draft, turns out she removed it. My immediate reaction was to take to Twitter, as with any rational person. I asked her for a clarification on this, but she didn't respond. I'm quite sure she had seen my request, since I was the only person to have mentioned her within a 6-hour period before and after that, for that matter. Either way, I essentially begged her for it, and eventually did actually receive a response from her, so in essence, I tweeted out, "Yo, Queen Magdal, I noticed that you set your Victims of Onision Speak Out includes emails video to private. Could I get an explanation as to why? Would would love to hear your reasoning. This obviously didn't get a response until I essentially nagged her for it, but her response was pretty clear.
To comply with YouTube's policy about multiple videos on the same subject equaling harassment, even when no individual video harasses. I made a new video about Onision victims, my latest video, so I took the old ones down. I think the policy is ridiculous, but can't fight the rules.
Alright, so basically, her response was perfectly fair, I guess, and I appreciate that she gave me a response, but therefore also means that my criticism is kinda still valid. She had nothing against that video and only took it down because of the harassment policy, which she got the details wrong from, by the way. In my opinion, this fits into the criticism I've given a ton of these people, being that she doesn't do enough research before looking into something, because she obviously does not know enough about the harassment guidelines, to the point where she would remove old videos containing context to the later ones so that she can make the later ones? What? Now, I completely disagree with the Leafy ban and whatever, but I don't think making, up to 6 videos over 6 months attempting to help people can get you banned. I wanted to check the exact numbers, but the Wayback Machine sucks for some reason. Alright, so I would have said that Leafy was more likely banned for making 11 consecutive videos, perhaps. The whole thing is a mess, but considering Repsion, Chris Hansen, and multiple other creators have not been banned for harassment despite covering the Onision case even more than she has, it feels a bit weird to me that she would remove the previous videos if this is what she actually cares about, allowing the victims to be heard. But either way, I reckon she's putting a bit too much trust on speculation herself. There's no need for her to publicly say anything about it, it's just weird to me that she would try to secretly get rid of it or something. There are multiple theories I initially had as to why she took the videos down, one of the funniest being that she might not be comfortable indirectly promoting a Leafy video or something now that he's banned. But funny enough, the issue turns out to actually be related to the ban of Leafy. What do you know, man? Personally, I have no idea why she wouldn't address it. It isn't a difficult thing to address publicly, especially if you actually have concern for the victims. In fact, that would look better on her part, so I don't know, innit? One thing that we do know, however, is that my boy John had a copy of this video so I could still make this segment. What a legend. Also, I really like this response one of her supporters gave, she privated the video, mate. Okay, to go back to the actual topic, this was more or less a little bit of a goof on her end. Out of anybody in the Chris Hansen detractors group thing, I for one was probably most offended by the whole email situation, to be honest. There was nothing horribly serious in it. I think it was perfectly fine to address the whole email situation, but not those specific ones, maybe? Because you're a drama channel, mate. This video was meant to be reporting on victims, not the Reddit users. Anyway, you might have guessed that there's some more stuff about her to delve into, so yeah, that's exciting. I would have gladly swept this under the rug if it weren't for the fact that she's since followed a very similar pattern when it comes to jumping on a pretty ridiculous topic purely because the person is disliked, but alas. Here we come with Blaire White. Now may I kindly please clarify that I'm not overly fond of Blaire White myself, nor is anybody involved in this story really. Something else I'm not a fan of, however, is spreading a false narrative of somebody saying the N-word just because you don't like them. For context, Blaire White is a YouTube channel that makes videos about trans people. Alright then. While holding about 1 million subscribers and getting pretty consistent viewership, she's still considered to be quite a controversial creator, and I'm not keen on her myself, as I said. A Twitter account by the name of JoJoC1A15, lovely, uploaded a video of some rather grotesque direct messages between her and Blaire White. If these were real, I would say that Blaire White is perfectly open to the criticism that was going to come her way. My stance on the N-word is a little bit vague, but I wouldn't react harshly if you use it because I'm not the person impacted by it. But if you do say it, you'll have to face your own consequences. Anyway, there was criticism going in her direction. However, my mate John Swan was quick to debunk these messages by showing that the screen recording was a little bit off in general, and the messages themselves disappear right as the transition between the messages of the account name starts.
Why does one part of the message transition before the other part, and why do the DMs black out? It's almost like this person's never DM'd Blaire White before, and these are just superimposed on top. Wow, that's amazing.
This is not normal Instagram behavior, let me make that extremely clear. As I said, I don't necessarily doubt that Blaire White would actually use the N-word, considering there is footage of her doing it in the past and all of that jazz. However, the point here is that this kind of baseless accusation is rather ridiculous to begin with. All the messages look real, but once they're proven to be fake, you can't try to continue the narrative that they're real. The worst part for me, however, is that Drama and Opinions ran with it. Not only by deciding that the clip was legitimate, but also attempting to prove John wrong by showing that the Instagram information is first blank before showing the details, when John's video clearly showcased that the messages themselves were disappearing.
What? I was pretty clear in my video. I don't really think I needed to spell it out, but she's looking at the wrong part of the DM. What?
She even claimed that John edited the screenshots to look fake or something, which is massively ridiculous and a bit of a baseless accusation. The funniest thing that I reckon this situation started was a snowball effect leading to Chris Hansen himself saying that the Goon Squad was attacking drama and opinions when we're simply showing the flaws in her argument. Some of the criticism made towards her were quite aggressive, but nobody meant her to receive any kind of harassment, in my opinion. Magdal did actually pull the harassment card, and I believe that any genuine harassment would not have been warranted considering it was just such a small mess up. But I reckon as a public figure like her, she needs to be made aware of the fact that what she says, just like Blaire White, has its consequences, just in different ways, innit? False accusations are something worth criticizing, and I must admit I give Drama and Opinions credit for doing research and attempting to debunk what John said. However, to her not so credit, I will say that said research was rather sloppy and could have been done a little more carefully in the future. The entire ordeal was a rather big misunderstanding due to the rather poor effort Magdal put into gathering information. In my opinion, the rest of the video is mostly valid. A lot of the points she made are pretty decent, and I'm perfectly fine with Blaire White receiving criticism for saying the N-word in the past. Now a little bit of a disclaimer here. Magdal actually seems like a very pleasant person who might just not react well to criticism and has some incredibly biased reporting, but I have very little doubt that she is trying to improve. My only problem with her currently is that she seems to still be actively working with and supporting Wait a minute. What's this? Whoa, what a legend.
It's something that actually makes people uncomfortable. So for you to be going forward with it without them, it's kind of like, for me, that's just how I feel about it.
When you're a drama creator, I will admit it's difficult to not jump on something and act as though it's a fact. Many channels do this and the audience often does as well, especially when it's a hated figure. The bias towards disliking a specific individual can often lead to biased reporting, as shown heavily with Drama and Opinions. Biased reporting, of course, being the operative word for taking something at face value simply because of the distaste for the person in general. This is an issue from Magdal as well as multiple other people, including a channel known as Spill. Very original name, mate. When the E-Boys were first founded, James Marriott created a video in order to promote the new channel, just as everybody else did. They made a video together on his channel about Nick Avocado's special website. It was a more light-hearted and funny video. Nick himself reacted to it in a way that showed he was perfectly fine with what they were saying. I mean, look at his little happy face here. How can you hate that guy? It was also a little bit flirtatious towards James in particular, most likely to fit in with the whole "let's cause some drama" shtick he has. James made a video on Nick's response, as somebody like James would, and made a number of jokes, as somebody like James would. One of which, James pretended to be uncomfortable with one of these clearly jokingly flirtatious remarks from Nick, but then proceeded to quite literally explicitly say that he was pretending to be uncomfortable. However, Spill decided to report on this issue as if James was being harassed by Nick or something. They showcase the clip and ignore the part where James explicitly says it was a joke. Wouldn't be surprised if Spill had made almost the entire video before realizing this fact and cut it out of the video. Spending so long on something only to realizing the entire point of it was wrong must be pretty disheartening, but that doesn't make it a valid mistake, obviously. Especially considering Spill is actually a company. There is enough information against Nick, for goodness sake. Go look into something else, Spill, please. If you're a drama creator, it's important that you realize that you need the full context of absolutely anything if you're reporting on it. In my opinion, there's also not a need to report on every single little detail that goes on in terms of a creator, because that's essentially just harassment. We were talking about that a minute ago. Some of these creators seem to make full 10-minute videos whenever somebody like Onision sneezes or something. That's another issue. People just want dirt on creators who received a large amount of scrutiny. They don't necessarily care about how credible the source is, they just want dirt. However, sometimes dirt can be dug up using a broken spade. That's a metaphor I just made up. I hope you like it. With all due respect, I will inform you lot that Spill was very quick to delete the video, but it was so painstakingly obvious that James thought the whole situation was hilarious, and I'm amazed that they made a video in the first place. I don't know, it's just odd, especially considering they're a company. Sometimes when a YouTube drama channel is reporting on a story, they need to be careful to not sound like a hypocrite. If you were to take the old PewDiePie N-word controversy for example, somebody like Keemstar as an example couldn't exactly say that PewDiePie is a terrible person for saying it, just as an example. This is the mistake that two particular YouTubers have recently made, one of which being I'm Alex and the other being Angelica Olez. I apologise for what I assume was a mispronunciation, but a YouTube video told me that that's how you pronounce it, so I'll take their word for it. These two individuals a while ago were caught under fire due to to their strange stance on another creator's stance on the stance of a TikTok user's actions. Wait a second. So that would imply that right now I'm giving my stance a semi-popular and semi-creepy TikTok drama account by the name of Perez Hilton. You see, Miss Olez and Mr. Elmsley both made a rather strange and hypocritical point against Mr. Hilton. You won't believe how many takes that took to say. Perez had a rather strong stance on the famous TikToker's dance moves and outfit. This TikToker was Charli D'Amelio. He was a bit annoyed at how explicit all of these things were, including the song. Believe me, I'm a little bit disturbed by it too, considering she was 16 at the time of making them. That's all well and good. I'm not going to make a huge stance against Charli because her TikToks are otherwise completely inoffensive and I don't want to dabble into that area too much. You know me, I'm not the kind of bloke. I don't really like TikTok and I don't care about the drama that happens within it. Alex and Angelica both made videos regarding Perez's complaints about Charli and her parents. Both of their stances were until they both made points essentially saying that it was bad of Perez to be making videos on children considering he's a bit of an odd personality. For both of them it started as a joke, but it turned into more of an allegation.
But also, Perez Hilton, get him off TikTok. Please, can we get this grown man banned on TikTok? Because the fact that he is commenting on what this child is doing blows my mind anyway.
In my opinion, these arguments were a little bit off because they were making an insinuation of a hopefully innocent man, saying that it was a bit of a creepy move to be making videos about children. This mistake is rather specific to these cases. The main reason I'm telling you this tale is because of the fact that they were using a hypocritical point against him, because both of these individuals have made multiple videos about Danielle Cohn, who is yet to be confirmed the age of, but has been alleged to have been as young as 11 years old. And you can't argue that their videos were light-hearted.
Yeah, you look a little like an 18-year-old girl in this picture.
But she's not an 18-year-old girl, is she? So she shouldn't be posting like stuff online. Just me? Or am I insane?
The specific points of, you probably shouldn't make videos on children, mate, is completely justified. It's just the fact that they skewed their own morals slightly by making a point against him in it. Not only have they made videos about children themselves, but I did the counting up. They both have made over an hour's worth of content each only on Danielle Cohn. When you're spilling the tea, you gotta be careful not to be hypocritical in doing so. When you do, you're putting yourself at risk of the same treatment you're giving the person you speak about. I know Angelica has been called out by multiple people in the past for being a hypocrite as well, but a lot of those examples were more tame. You could be perfectly fine with their stances, I don't blame you, and in fact encourage you to watch their videos to formulate your own opinion. Now obviously I don't hate either of these two, in fact I could see myself watching Angelica. I just feel that the fact that she's constantly giving her takes on drama, she's led down an almost dark path where I feel like she's inclined to follow the majority, yet also have a strong opinion. This issue has come to light again and again and again as of recently. It is a shame because it feels like she isn't being quite as transparent when she's just seemingly skewing her own morals to take the high ground with a piece of drama news. I came across this tweet a while ago where she had been arguing for her credibility and ended up falling for public pressure of things. I'll personally say that she cares for her own credibility, obviously. She wants to do better, it's just the fact that when you're constantly putting yourself above others, it leads to a weird sense of ego. This isn't only her problem either, I've had that issue as well. This is something that all drama content creators deal with in some capacity. Personally, I've made some similar mistakes of pushing away my own morals for public opinion or just a poorly worded take in general. Being constantly invested in YouTube drama leads to overthinking and some stressful slip-ups. When you're a creator like her, you're constantly pushed to agree with the majority or are forced just to have an opinion in general. This causes this exact issue with her takes or just takes that are phrased poorly, for example. She clearly deals with this a lot of the time. She also just might not have put enough research into something before making a video simply for the fact that she has to report on every news story and has to be entertaining, mind you. I know that there are a number of my friends that dislike Angelica, and I guess you can have your own opinions on her. I just reckon that she's a lovely lass, unfortunately corrupted by the drama sphere and needing to constantly get in on a topic. Speaking of getting in on a topic, when you're a creator, you often find yourself putting yourself on the moral high ground, and sometimes that can lead to illegal actions to try and take that moral high ground. What do I mean by that? Well, let's start looking into... On YouTube, one of the primary things that people appreciate is anonymity. No matter who you are, how awkward you feel public attention can be, you're still able to be appreciated for the work you do anonymously. I personally have a bit of a thing for privacy myself, I don't know if that's obvious enough, and violating the act of privacy through doxing, well, let's just say it's pretty bad, you know? Now considering that my parents don't exactly know what the definition is, and there are possibly many other people that don't, I'm going to pull a full-on commentary channel and give you the Google definition of the word. Doxxing is defined as the search for and publish of private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent. This act is extremely common in the community. And you know what I said? Oh, hi Nick, what are you doing here? Right, okay, now we move into...
Today we'll be briefly discussing the channel T-Sesh, which is a T-channel that uploads content in a similar style to memology. In these videos, you'll find no facecam or voiceover, and the text on screen is what makes it transformative. The videos on this channel average out to about 4 to 8 minutes, and the editing itself is, well, nothing to write home about. The channel is filled with both cringy music and crusty JPEGs. The reason we're discussing this incredibly interesting channel today is because they condone content that is essentially the personification of the ugly side of cancel culture. This YouTuber is both comfortable and unapologetic about using their large and growing audience to encourage the doxing and harassment of a child in high school.
Not to be confused by the pitch-shifting voice changer YouTuber Spillsesh, T-Sesh doesn't even use her own voice at all on the internet. Complete and utter privacy. She loves privacy to the point of calling out anybody attempting to dox T-channels. This isn't a bad thing, by the way, it's just setting up for the actual bad thing, okay? As somebody that keeps my face private, personally I respect this decision from her, but not when you're exposing other people's private information while keeping your own identity completely anonymous. In that case, that line of what's appropriate gets a little bit unclear. A while back, in May 2020 to be specific, T-Sesh got into a reasonably small controversy with a number of people within the commentary community after she publicly humiliated and doxed a minor from TikTok.
Now, to be fair to all parties, the video was incredibly stupid. It's completely out of touch, and I can understand why someone would be upset over it. If this video offends you and you want to leave a mean comment or something, that's perfectly acceptable. Tweet it out if you have to. Complain until your heart's content. However, T-Sesh noticed this girl was incredibly young and instructed her audience to, quote-unquote, do their thing.
Now, I don't know about you, but I personally don't like that phrase, Twitter do your thing, because it sounds like a proper call to dox or harass somebody without explicitly telling them to, so you can't get any of the blame for it.
One Twitter user who has since privated their account and deleted all of these tweets located everything from the full name of a minor to, her school mascot. Now T-Sesh realized this went too far, and she told her fans this is a bit too much, right? Well, no, of course she didn't. T-Sesh retweeted the school principal's email from the account that fully doxed the girl, and also was responding to the chain telling her fans that someone should email the principal in the replies of the thread that contained her dox.
You can use Keemstar's defense being that if you report on the news, doxing is your best friend, but I don't agree. When she was called out for it by multiple friends of mine, she happened to double down, attempting to say that no, she didn't actually dox the person. And to that I say, you kinda did. I mean, you indirectly encouraged your followers to, and then shared a piece of private information when they did.
In denial after denial, T-Sesh also stated that they're an account that hides their own identity, as a reason why they would never dox someone else, which makes it all the more funny. After seeing this tweet, I wondered if there were any other similar situations that T-Sesh was involved in, and what I found was that they took a pretty hard stance on doxing a few months ago. When they were the target. Funny how that turns out, isn't it? After T-Sesh spent a few hours pretending that they did nothing wrong, he or she actually retweeted the original tweet, to get it seen by more people on a clout move, which is hilarious. Apparently getting this girl doxed wasn't enough.
Not long after, there was an article released stating that these two individuals in the TikTok were being investigated, but there was no further action. Nobody knows if they're still at school. I reckon they are, but not too sure about how popular they are with many of the teachers. I obviously do not condone or agree with any of what the girls did, at all. It was egregious then, considering what they were doing, but doxing is also very irresponsible. Probably the most confusing and also worrying aspect to this whole debacle is the fact that T-Sesh is completely private. No face, no name, not even a voice, which is odd to me. Personally, being anonymous has occasionally made me feel like I can act a bit more irrational, and I think a lot of smaller creators could testify to that. But no matter who you are or what you do, encouraging doxing is still bad, and spreading a dox is even worse. I think Nick, of course it was Nick, put it really well in this tweet. Kind of summarizes my thoughts in only about 212 characters, so here you are. Now, I I've spoken about multiple things so far in this video, as you can tell. I've mentioned a large bias towards a hater creator, I've mentioned hypocrisy, awful standards that a bunch of these people hold others up to, and finally the strange doxing that a lot of people seem to deem as appropriate. But what if there was a perfect drama that combined all of these things into one? What would be the outcome of this completely fabricated story involving many of these things? Well, I guess you can find that out in the case, yes, that's right, I said case, of Sanders Kennedy.
I got a call back from Sergeant Payne.
Sanders Kennedy. Where do we start with you, mate? Mr. Kennedy, at this point in time, is one of the most controversial creators I'll be speaking about in this video, and it's probably apparent why. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that some people would completely fabricate a story to form their own narrative. This is what Sanders did in fact do. When the whole situation of everybody cancelling Shane Dawson went down, Sanders had a bit of a hiccup, and I honestly don't understand it. At the time of the controversy, Sanders Kennedy was a relatively credible creator from what I can understand. I mean, Keemstar stated that he had been right before, and he isn't just some random dude. Holding an audience of a number of subscribers, around 250,000 from what I know, being in the scene for over 6 years, with a consistent viewer rate of approximately 50,000 views, his lowest views in the months prior being about 7,000 and the highest being around 700,000 or 300,000. Not a bad foothold in my opinion. However, he now has all his details private. His latest video is over a month old at the time of writing, and having a like to dislike ratio that would otherwise be completely unbelievable. He got himself into some hot water for a very avoidable and completely understandable reason.
The first thing I want to say is that I stand behind my video that I posted.
You will remember the Shane Dawson controversy. I've mentioned it many other times in this video, in fact. The whole thing was massive on all social media. If you're somehow not aware, Mr. Dawson, almost out of nowhere, began receiving backlash on all social media due to many predatory and racist jokes. A creator with about 20 million subscribers, having the entire world seeing him in an entirely negative light. This gave way for many expose videos and a ton of backlash. But as with every controversy, it also gave way to multiple false narratives that were made. Similar to Blaire White, I don't disagree that Shane is in fact problematic, but what I agree with less is false accusations. James Charles had a very similar problem a year before during his whole debacle that's ironically connected to the Shane Dawson one, where many people came out with false accusations against him just to get a kick out of it, I guess. The difference between those and this case is that Sanders Kennedy was indeed a much more trusted creator, whereas those accounts were often simply stans or previous classmates. Kennedy's motivation was clearly views. As I said earlier, that's fine. However, when it's used in this way, it certainly isn't fine. Kennedy specifically decided to fabricate a story that there was an investigation into Shane Dawson, simply because Shane was a trending topic and he knew the video would do well because of it. This is something that I would assume is common knowledge for most people, but don't fabricate a story. If you're a channel reporting on the ongoings of other creators, especially when you're giving your opinion, just don't make something up. I mean, isn't that obvious? I mean, I'm sorry, mate, but I really am, but these actions are completely ridiculous. Not only morally, but also legally. The thing is that somebody like Shane Dawson could actually sue him for this. Oh. Well then. Right. Let's get into the detail. The first video released by Sanders Kennedy was, in essence, pretty misleading. In my opinion, it was way too jolly for what the video was apparently meant to be. He gave a little bit of context to the whole situation with Shane Dawson, who's using colloquial language as if it was somebody's makeup palette dropping or something. The entire thing was a mess, so I'll just skip to the juicy bit.
I did make it known that I did contact the sheriff's department and see if there is something that's gonna happen with this, where on their spectrum of things what could they do, and they exclusively told me.
Oh yeah, they did they, mate? In all honesty, it was hilarious from the get-go. Why would they tell a random drama creator about an investigation that would otherwise be kept really quiet? He also showed no proof of an investigation going on. His only form of that was the classic, dude, trust me. In the video, he said that there was an investigation that was opened, which is kinda true. It was something along the lines of a suspicious circumstances case.
And can you repeat the type of investigation that's going on again?
Right now, it's just a suspicious circumstance investigation.
No actual investigation going on. But Sanders Kennedy decided that he would make a full video saying that there was in fact a full investigation. Because he wanted to get a story out, Kennedy practically lied about a public figure in order to get views, I think. The general reaction to the video was what you probably would expect. Some people believed him, but most didn't. Now here comes the climax to this entire controversy. Another YouTuber by the name of Without a Crystal Ball tweeted out that people should contact the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department by calling a specific number. Here's the catch though, she specifically said to speak tweet to Sergeant Payne because he was apparently the one to have released the information on the investigation. However, after that tweet was made, one of the funniest revelations about this entire debacle was made. Sergeant Payne, bless him, it seemed was likely to have been retired.
Can I possibly speak to Deputy Sheriff Marvin Payne?
He can't hear us. Wait.
He can't hear us, by the way. He can't hear us.
He's retired?
This was of course only Marvin Payne. It was later discovered that the individual without a crystal ball was talking about was in fact Dave Payne, but he apparently stated there was no investigation, so it was completely fabricated. Not only this, but an article released by Insider states that, quote,
"The LASD confirmed to Insider that there is no investigation into Dawson, and that any statements otherwise were misinformation."
So there was proof from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department that there was no investigation and that Kennedy was either lying or somehow being completely misinformed, which would make no sense. Kennedy had completely fabricated a story for the purpose of getting views on YouTube. Not only did he make this all up and end up practically harassing the Sheriff's Department, but he also doubled down and attempted to save himself by removing the word official from the original video, since there was no official investigation going on.
That there is an investigation.
That sounds edited. That sounds like you went to the YouTube studio and mixed some words around to cover up your tracks. Let's listen to that again from an unedited format featuring Tommy C.
Because they exclusively informed me that there is an official investigation.
Wait, there's an official investigation? Hold on now. But you said in the new version of the video
that there is an investigation.
You edited that out.
The whole situation was very strange and I can't quite understand his motivation, to be completely frank. He was a well-respected creator from what I understand. As I said, Keemstar pointed out that he was, and yeah. His current latest video was released not long after, confirming that there was no investigation into Shane Dawson. Just a 15-second video saying things extremely bluntly. The way he said it almost sounded like he had never contacted them in the first place. But that's obviously not the case. He was the one that brought Shane's old videos to their attention and stuff like that, so. Like I said though, the video was very bluntly put, and why would that be? Well, it looks like Kennedy may have suffered the consequences for his actions. It had been alleged not long after the fact that Shane Dawson may have in fact sued him for the video that he made, or may have just got him into legal trouble in general. That would make sense, Kennedy hadn't uploaded for months afterwards, and also Cat Tenbaj, apologies for the mispronunciation, I'm really sorry. The journalist that wrote the Insider article stated on Twitter that, well, appropriate action is an interesting thing to call whatever may be going on. Unfortunately for Kennedy, it looks like he got a bit too caught up in the idea of being a big investigative journalist, and not only made a fatal error, but also soiled his entire reputation and possibly career in doing so. I personally can't help but feel sorry for the bloke, to be perfectly honest. When you get involved into looking into internet drama or beef, you can't look at a situation from one angle and simply report on something with little to no evidence. You can't simply jump on for views or attention because that's not the right mentality in this specific genre. If a creator you don't like is being falsely accused of something, don't feel threatened to disavow the false accusation. It honestly isn't that difficult, because if you don't approve of what somebody is actually doing, you should be able to stand your ground strong enough to hold what is right above them. When you're taking the moral high ground, you need to actually be above them morally, innit? You can do your own research into things, that's perfectly fine, but you can't do a small amount of sloppy research as to try to debunk something. If somebody manages to completely debunk an accusation using frame-by-frame analysis, for example, you gotta look a bit more deeply into it before calling them out and assuming that they're wrong. You also gotta make sure that you don't simply jump on something to report it simply for the fact that you don't like the creator, because you could end up making a stand against your own morals, innit? You can make opinionated pieces on different dramas, I guess, but if you're gonna make a point, it needs to be valuable. More importantly, credible. Many of these individuals see themselves as these great, powerful, sometimes untouchable news sources, and that's just not the case. These are human beings reporting on what other human beings are doing, and humans are more than flawed by nature. There's only a certain amount of time before you need to clamber off your high horse and admit to being wrong, or possibly get sued. As with all the people you criticize, there are consequences to what you say, there are consequences to what you do, and there are certainly people out to get you whenever you make a mistake. There's a weird ego that a lot of T-channels will actively criticize large creators for, of how the creator will think that they could essentially get away with nearly anything due to the powerful position or following. But this isn't just big conglomerate YouTube big heads that struggle with this issue. Everybody that grows as a creator at some point will have to face the moment where they acknowledge ego being a genuine problem. You have to look yourself in the mirror and belittle yourself to a point where you know that in reality you aren't quite as unproblematic as people make you out to be. Whether that's losing a debate against another creator or something as low as losing 10 subscribers after you change your account name, every single YouTuber at some point will struggle with ego. It's just how you manage it that's the issue. T-channels specifically will deal with ego themselves quite a lot. Some creators do a really good job at keeping their ego in check, managing to stay a relatable creator everyone likes. Others simply don't and face the consequences of controversy. Being a famous creator doesn't make you more than credible, as much as you'd probably like to think that. The audience will believe that you are, and that's why you hold the responsibility. But being a giant creator doesn't automatically mean that you've done a giant amount of research. It's just how reality functions, mate. Along this line, having a large subscriber count next to your name will not hide the fact that you are indeed just about as intelligent as the people you criticize, if not sometimes less intelligent. Now I'm sure that by this point in the video you may have noticed the pattern of behaviour that I'm trying to show. Many T channels, certainly not only these ones, will make videos or do something to stand up against a bad person or thing, but in the process of standing up against a bad thing, they themselves do a different bad thing too. This has come to light again multiple times since I concluded the script for this video, and many of these examples are videos of their own.
And I watched a few of Ria's videos here, and they're really sloppily done. You know, some of them posting about, you know, serious allegations of abuse and that sort of thing, and she botches it every time. But up till now, it's been mostly petty stuff, so I haven't even bothered, you know, making a video or making a tweet about it.
But the issue just keeps coming back. Obviously, I would not hesitate for a second before saying that I do not support Onision, Shane Dawson, and especially not racism. I'm hoping that's abundantly clear and is common knowledge. But it doesn't feel right to support somebody fighting a good cause with a bad thing. I know I've been a little bit more harsh than usual in this video, and if I've caused any unnecessary anger from some people in the audience towards the people, I apologise. This is not meant to be an attack on them, because they're not the only people that have to deal with this problem. Many people in the T community do. The reason I've been pretty stern is because of the severity of the issue. This is a problem that can quite literally get you into legal trouble if you're not careful, and can wipe you off the face of the platform likewise. I'm trying to get into these people's heads how serious of a problem this is, because of the danger they put themselves in, at which they probably wouldn't realise until it's too late, because the audience is willing to dismiss this bad thing. But I tell you what, Shane Dawson certainly isn't willing to dismiss it. The whole purpose of T is to report on the ongoings within the makeup of TikTok communities and look at the people in an entirely negative light. That's the only purpose of it. Commentary's more like the mafia. I know there's a bit of a meme at this point, but it's just how it is. It's a case of you can speak about anybody and give your opinion on their take, whether it's right or wrong. For me, T feels like everything's an effort to get other creators deplatformed if you simply don't like. I would personally say that Keemstar has done some awful things, had some terrible stances, and has made some terrible mistakes in the past. But I personally wouldn't say that he doesn't deserve the platform he has, because as an individual he seems like a pretty nice guy and has worked hard to reach the position that he has done, though a lot of the things he has done are perfectly worthy of criticism. The purpose of criticism is to improve. If the individuals in this video don't improve, then that's on them. You know, I want them to do better, innit? I think every creator mentioned in this video has responded pretty poorly when they've received criticism, whether it's calling people #obsessed, leaving social media for a number of days suspiciously, or hiding a point that you made in the video from the public by cutting out specific words. Criticism is one of the only ways that we improve as human beings, in my opinion. If you call people out so much, you're going to be called out yourself in some capacity. You'll need to be fully prepared to face backlash for the stuff that you say. Just because you're criticizing other people doesn't mean you aren't flawed yourself. I mean to say, if you criticize other people so frequently for being egotistical or doing blackface, you're giving yourself this moral superiority and ego that sometimes becomes a problem for yourself, innit? Well, now my beverage is getting cold, so I just want to tell you lot that there are many problematic creators in the community you will stumble across. Make sure you know who you trust, and be prepared to face backlash depending on what you say. Don't shift your own morals purely to make a point, and don't go after people for completely irrational things just for clicks. And most importantly, don't completely fabricate a story. Well, now after that extensive mess, I now conclude my case against T channels.
Not a chance, fella. Not a chance.